Hey everyone, our 50th live stream. Hey Dr. Scott, cheers.
Hi, our 50th live stream and the last one before the fire apocalypse of the environment.
Yeah, there's
the last time we'll ever be able to be outside again.
It's a million gazillion degrees, but we thought this would be a fun little change to be outside in our backyards because Dr. Scott finally has a backyard.
Yeah.
It's really a celebration of that, for sure, for sure. What are you drinking, Dr. Scott?
I am drinking a Perrier with lemon and like a splash of white wine because I still have errands to run this afternoon. So I have to be very careful and responsible.
Oh, that's nice. Okay. I learned how to make myself a Hugo Spritz. So I've changed from an Aperol Spritz to Hugo Spritz. It's like Saint Germain or any other elderflower liqueur, Prosecco, topped off with a little club soda and some mint in there. So
that's perfect. Yeah.
Yes.
I never really got the Aperol Spritz thing. Like that was too much bitter for me.
Really? Yeah. People are like, what the hell is this? It tastes like NyQuil or Dayquil, liquid Dayquil cough medicine.
Yeah. Yeah. Although I think I may have mentioned last time when Dan and I were leaving Edinburgh, we were at Edinburgh Castle and we bought the Stag's Breath honey whiskey, and that mixed with Prosecco is an incredible cocktail.
Yummo. Nice. Very nice. So it's our 50th live stream. We are going to open up today with Dr. Scott doing a dramatic reading. We will explain. There will be more of it. We'll sprinkle it throughout, but I think we wanted to start there. And then we can talk about just 3 years of doing this and some other stuff we have in store for you guys. And hi, Emily. Hi, Jason, in the live chat already.
Emily's said ew to my backyard, to my back.
To your back? I don't think that's what she said ew to. Let's see. I don't know. Yes? We're always playing catch up. Oh, look at all the bougainvillea.
Yeah, bird of paradise, little cactus planting. I was up this morning transplanting. Oh, it looks great.
So I have these 3 bougainvillea and only the one on the very, very far end is like crazy blooming and the other 2 are out of sync. So I walk over to that one. I'm like, I'm proud of you. You're doing great. The other 2, I'm disappointed in you. You need to pick it back up.
No, you got to get bougainvillea food. There's a plant food that makes them explode.
Okay.
I'll show it to you. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So hey, where are the reviews? Did you send them?
Oh, I made a doc. Go into our Google Docs and I have everything laid out there. So while you're fighting that, I'll tell everyone something funny. Okay. So I love everything cactus, desert, my 2 pillows. So my daughter loves to go vintage antique flea market shopping. Not really my thing, but I take her. And I saw this pillow. It was like $4 or something. So I got this awesome shape, right? So I put it out here and I go to lean on it the other day. Do you need me to sign you in, Scott? Hang on. Okay. So I go to lean on it the other day, and I don't know if you can hear it. It vibrates. Have you ever heard of a vibrating pillow?
Yeah, I have, but I wasn't expecting that. It also sounded like a demon from this end.
I leaned against it and I almost fucking flipped off of my couch out here. I was like, what the hell? This thing's got to be worth at least $15. It vibrates. What the hell? Oh, too funny. Are you in yet?
I am, but what's the doc called?
50th BTC. Hi, Catherine H, our winner from last month for our Patreon giveaway at our doctoral level. Okay, Catherine, since you're here, I'll tell you about the book. So we actually sent Catherine a copy of The Gift of Fear by Gavin DeBecker. So, Scott and I have talked about this book a million gazillion times. It's always on our reading list. And it was the first episode of Surviving the Survivor that I was on with Joel, and one of the other guests works for Gavin DeBecker. And afterwards, like the two gentlemen that I was on there with we were so lovely. We decided to keep in contact. And he said, I'm going to send you guys signed copies from Gavin DeBecker, like signed by him, and I'm going to send them to you guys. So like months went by and it didn't happen. And I was like, whatever, that's fine. And then all of a sudden, this book shows up in my mailbox from him, but it wasn't signed by Gavin DeBecker, which totally fine, right? It's lovely that he sent the book, but I have my own version that I've had for so long. So I told Scott, I said, let's send this to our next winner and we'll sign it. So that's what Catherine won last month, because she's at one of our doctoral level Patreon tiers. So Miss Shannon is here. Lauren is here. We have tons of people trickling in. So with that, I will let you guys know that Scott is going to start with a dramatic reading. Proceed whenever you're ready. Try to compose yourself. We're doing this mostly.
Are we giving any background about what these are?
Let's just cold open with this one,
okay,
and then we'll get into it.
Okay. So here we go. Copaganda feat, a Disney adult and an ex-cop, all in bold. It's bad enough how much true crime media is just people unquestionably parroting law enforcement narratives. Put a pin in that. Can you just like make notes? Yeah. Now we have to hear from these supposedly impartial third-party forensics professionals who are nothing more than just extensions of law enforcement. I can't imagine going into a field like mental health and only using my expertise to betray my clients. Law enforcement doesn't need any more help abusing the people they are meant to protect. What frustrates me the most about this podcast is their complete unwillingness to engage with the reality of American law enforcement. Cops and the forensics professionals who enable them are not on a quest for truth. They are on a quest for a clearance rating. Even if there are individuals within the system on the quest for truth, the system itself is uninterested in anything other than just a clearance rating.
Okay.
So clearly, what we're doing is we're sharing with you guys some. We have had this discussion many times about whether or not we would ever open this up as a conversation about the reviews that we get. And Shiloh, I've wanted to, and Shiloh has always pulled me back, and she finally acquiesced at our 50th live stream.
So we're tossing around ideas what to do today. We just wanted it to be Scott and I, and we wanted to throw something fun in there. And I'm in the bathtub one night. I text Scott on my phone. I'm like, what if we read our 1-star reviews? Because I mean, certainly I have never wanted, even before and especially after we did our trolls episode, like I seriously just wanted to live by don't feed the trolls, right? So I've never wanted to repost them, put them on social media. I know a lot of other podcasters do that.
Right.
I think it just gives more attention and more of a platform to these people. But I think Scott and I are in a place where we can certainly laugh at them, and we can look at them after we laugh. Then we look at them and we go, gosh, what's really like going on for this person, as you might expect, from our perspectives. So let's talk about this one.
There's so much to break down.
This isn't even the longest
one. Yeah.
This is one of Scott's favorites, though. I mean, when we got this one, he was like, yes, I am a Disney adult. But how much true crime media is just people unquestionably parroting the law enforcement narratives, which I would have to say, I know we've talked about like law enforcement celebrities being glorified in true crime before, but I would say it swung way over to the other side.
I think I don't even know where they're coming from with that, because in fact, I get, for one thing, I'm going to just do an overall disagreement that the person writing this, I'm gonna make a general statement that you have some very strong feelings, and you're absolutely allowed your feelings. You're also literally 100% wrong. You have no idea of the work I do. You have no idea of what I have to manage personally inhabiting the space that I inhabit as a mental health professional working in a paramilitary organization. You just don't know. And like the level of assumption that this review makes, and I'm not offended by it, because that's part of, this is what I do. I have to deal with this. But I would flip back on them, the lack of ability. First of all, you're starting with a premise that's completely wrong. Like, there's so much criticism of police work in true crime that actually inhibits and impedes solving of cases. That, like, that's going to be the next wave, I think, in the next few years, is talking about how on one hand we have incredible value with citizen detectives, and then on the other hand we have people that muddy the waters constantly. Sure. But I'm
it
go ahead.
I think it would have taken too much time if I had like pulled the dates for these two to kind of see, like, were they listening to a certain episode? Like, and especially in the last 3 years, right? Just like the temperature of people's feelings towards law enforcement and systemic racism in the criminal justice system, and all the things that we have absolutely talked about and acknowledged, probably more so here on the live stream. But I think there is an ebb and flow to that. But I thought this was a good one to start, one, because it's Scott's favorite. And I'm very disappointed they didn't go on to explain the Disney adult part.
Oh, yeah.
You have it in the title. Let's hear more about your thoughts. But I think it's also, it hits on a couple themes that you do see in our 1-star reviews. And these are all 1-star reviews. I have an honorable mention at the end that was a 2-star review that hopefully we'll get to. And Jason, when they say clearance rate, they're just talking about like detectives closing cases or cops, clearing cases and solving crimes. So yeah, I don't know what else.
Which is actually a real tell about who the person is that wrote that.
Could be.
Yeah.
I mean, no doubt Scott and I work in this arena. Me being former law enforcement, coming from a law enforcement family, we know we come to this with a certain perspective and life experience that is going to be different than other people, because we have lived in homes and celebrated holidays and worked every single day with really, really wonderful law enforcement professionals. So no doubt, I think that is the lens through which we first look at things. But also, like, again, just like their second sentence, these supposedly impartial third-party forensics professionals, we're just two people that have a podcast that happen to be forensic psychologists.
And what is the third party thing? Do you understand the context for that, or do you have any thoughts about it?
Maybe that we're not law enforcement, but we're sort of removed from it. I don't know. I just think it's interesting what people feel like they want and what they're going to hear when they tune into someone's podcast. And when they're pretty disappointed by that, I think that's also a theme that we get as we go through and read these. It's like, again, we're just two people. Like, we're best friends before anything. And this is our profession. And here we are just kind of talking about the stuff that we do and the stuff that we see and the research. So yeah, that's what you're getting with us. Okay, before we move on,
wait, hold on. I'm not done. I'm not done.
See, we didn't do this to read these. We did these to get Scott's
I just because I really am trying to, like, look, and I have written reviews and in the past that I wrote a review one time on a YouTube short film produced, directed, and acted by an actor who did a great job with a low budget. And there was one actor, a female actress, who this is a term we use in entertainment, is it looked like she was in a completely different movie. Like everybody else is kind of on the same thing, and she was doing something wildly different. And I pointed that out, and the rage that came back at me from that person that I'm assuming was that actress was like, I felt bad. I mean, I felt bad that she was hurt by what I said. I didn't mean it personally. But I thought, you know, you're going into an industry where you're going to be judged every single step of the way. And if you're going to get enraged by one comment by some guy, me, then I think that there's a lesson to be learned there. But there's something here that just gives it away, using my expertise to betray my clients. So that to me feels actually personal. Like it feels like, because I don't betray my clients at all. Right. You can, like, it's so funny. There are so many areas that I'm super sensitive about, which Shiloh's well aware of, those that are close to me are well aware of. But when it comes to client care, I'm very clear. You know, I got excellent education. I got excellent training. I got excellent mentorship. I'm very clear about what the goals and responsibilities are in my day-to-day work. And, you know, so it's just interesting. It felt like something we had said in a particular episode just sort of got them pissed off. Yeah. But,
well, and I think that's probably what drives people to write bad reviews. It's probably something personal, because either it's one short run-on sentence that doesn't make sense. It's one sentence that's sort of run on, very impulsive, or it's very well thought out and lengthy, to where something activated them, I guess is, you know, the way to say it. So we have more for you. But first we want to acknowledge our new Patreon members since the last time we had a live stream. We have Michaela M. I love the name Michaela.
It's beautiful.
We have Caitlin G, Jennifer P, Megan D, and Robin A.W. Thank you guys so much for joining at the end of June and in July, up until today, the 22nd. Again, appreciate all of you so much. Our Patreon has, you know, just been such a lovely space. And whether you guys just kind of join and we never hear a peep from you and you're sort of in the background, we love that you have decided to support us in that way. And those of you that we feel like we're like sisters and cousins with and uncles too, and all of the above, you know, we appreciate you, of course. So with that, so yes, this is our 50th live stream. We have been doing this for 3 years. It was a pandemic baby, right? I mean, we started on Get Vocal. So I know many other creators were hopping on that during the pandemic. So many people were doing such interesting stuff. You know, John Lorden had all of his like game show things he was doing. And yeah, when Get Vocal was on, that was hilarious. Obviously we got away from that platform a couple years ago, but you know, anybody could just kind of pop in, which was wonderful, but also super funny at times, because you just get like someone sealing and they didn't know they were on, or they did, but just got their sealing. No talking, nothing. And Scott and I, and especially like go back and watch those early ones if you haven't. Right, I know Abby says Get Vocal, the good old days, where Scott and I would be like, hey Tabitha, how are you? Did you want to contribute to the conversation? It would be like radio silence.
Yeah.
But we also met some wonderful people that way. I think some people stumbled upon some things we were doing and, popped in, and some people I've kept in touch with on social media. And it was a really cool thing. I think by our third one, we had guests. We had Nick and Jessa from Getting Off. We were talking about, all of the civil unrest. And it just, obviously our guest list has been crazy since then. But yeah, the second episode was during all the civil unrest after the murder of George Floyd in LA. I mean, literally helicopters over your place, Scott. I mean, Melrose was like burning that night, that week. It's kind of a wild time to think back to how long we've been doing this and where we started.
Yeah, it's amazing, sort of these milestones that our world has gone through in just this last handful of years while we've been doing this. So this has been a nice kind of follow through, a thread for us to stay on. Certainly has been like a touchstone for me to like stay, okay, this is what my responsibilities are. I've got this commitment, and that's been helpful. Yeah.
We've definitely stuck with it longer than a lot of other people. And I think, what drives that is clearly, like, we've scaled back to doing one a month after we ramped up our episodes a year ago. But, Scott and I really want to be able to provide more content for you guys in a way that we can fit into our schedules, to be honest, but also bring you some quality guests and conversations and just continue that a little bit more casually. God, if some of these 1-star reviews we're reading, if they had tuned in to Get Vocals and live streams, their heads might explode.
True.
With as loosey-goosey as we are sometimes. So I thought maybe we just talk about like some of our favorite past episodes of live streams. Anything that pops out to you just off the top of your head?
I think one of our earliest ones was super fun for me, having my friend Al on, who is an art director in movie and TV production. And we did The Exorcist.
What did he come on?
We came on to talk about The Exorcist. Oh, wait, that was an episode. That wasn't our live stream.
But I know he's popped into our live streams before, though.
Yes,
I know he has. I can't remember the topic, though.
Yeah, so that was really cool. And then Jamie Gehring, having her on was just amazing, and getting to know her and sort of this fascinating confluence of events that brought us together has been really great. I think everybody that's been on has been wonderful.
I know. I'm seeing
Bryce.
Yeah. Lots of chatter in the chat here about Nick and Jessa. Nick, Jessa, people miss you. I know, Jessa.
That's the truth.
Very busy being wonderful parents, but it looks like people want you to come back. Abby, featuring of Dr. Shiloh's dad. Yes, my dad has popped into a lot of Get Vocals, which reminds me of probably one of my absolute favorites, because we had so many people in that platform, was when we did the Night Stalker follow-up. And my dad was on that one. My brother was on that one. He was, they were talking about what it was like living in Los Angeles. We had an LAPD, retired LAPD SWAT and SIS officer on, talking about what it was like kind of in the manhunt and trying to track this guy. We had authors come on. Yeah. Oh yeah. But just the Night Stalker one, I feel like we just had so many different perspectives, and like it was almost a revolving door of guests to talk about what it was like. And that's aside from remembering the victims more like we should, other than Richard Ramirez, I think just capturing the feeling of what it was like for Angelenos during that time was so important. And I feel like that was just a really special live stream that we did. So let's see. I'm just looking at this. Chris Duet. Did Chris come into one of our live streams? Did he talk about that? Yeah, I think he did.
I think so. Yeah.
And then, yeah, Shannon was mentioning our friend Adrian, fellow Patreon member and friend, who brought his veteran friends on when we talked about stolen valor. I mean, it's one thing to do an episode on it, but then to have guys that had some kick-ass careers and some major sacrifices for their service talk about how it feels when, you know, those stories come up. That was really, really powerful. I was looking back through the list today, and I was thinking about during like the whole pandemic and QAnon craziness when we did that QAnon but make it fashion. So there was part of the QAnon conspiracy of like liberal newscasters, if they were wearing polka dots, like any sort of Dalmatian, like white background with black polka dots or black sort of dot print, that was a reference to firefighters and an inside job to 9/11 because of Dalmatians. Talk about a leap. And then if they wore a plaid pattern, that again represented the lines in the Twin Towers. So Scott and I did that whole episode, me wearing a black and white polka dot top and him wearing a plaid shirt. And we talked all about, you know, more QAnon after our episode and all the crazy, crazy conspiracies.
That continue to this day, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, gosh, I don't know. Again, I know Scott and I have raved about it a lot lately, and probably in the next episode that hasn't come out yet. But we highly recommend Conspirituality podcast. Go listen to them, because this is their whole area. And they're just so smart about it. And there's just more cropping up every day, unfortunately, out of this crazy, crazy beast. So, but yeah, we've had some wonderful authors, academics, all of our podcast friends, like the girls from Los Feliz Murder Mansion podcast. That was so good and so fun.
And what a story to get all of that after all of the conflicting information for year after year, to get the real story on that was really great, especially because it's such an LA sort of a myth that had been built up over the years, and for them to come in and strip away all of the myth and the misinformation and reveal something that was just as disturbing, you know, in its own right.
I know. Yeah. So continue to let us know in the chat what your favorites were, guys, and we'll talk about those as we sprinkle in some more 1-star reviews.
Well, yeah, let's do it. Wait, did you mention you gave all the names of our Patreon members, right?
I did, yes.
Okay, great. So 1-star rating number 2. Get to the point. These two digress too much in their intros. I was born and raised in Los Angeles. These two try to capitalize on LA as a thing associated with celebrity, Hollywood, decadence. LA is a place, not a state of mind. These two love hearing themselves talk. Highly educated, smarty pantses.
Smarty pantses.
Not smarty pants, smarty pantses.
Both of us. Smarty
Again,
pantses.
like it's.
Oh my gosh.
It's such, I don't even know what to do with that. Like,
I think we need to change our tagline to highly educated smarty pantses.
Yeah, true.
I mean, if we don't make money on this and sell a little merch, what are we even doing?
Well, what's really funny is that, you know, you and I don't think we've, maybe we haven't even shared it here yet, but we had some nameplates made for our first conference that we went to. And one side said Dr. Scott, Dr. Scott or Dr. Shiloh for each of us. And the other one, I'm a fucking professional is what yours says,
Mine
right?
said I'm a fucking professional, and yours said, did it say Dr. Know-It-All or something?
I think
like
it's
that?
Dr. Know-It-All. So even before this review came out, it's like the whole idea of us doing the format of the show that we do is to show you our relationship. And it just seemed like somebody got really offended that we have a relationship, but we don't immediately launch into a typed narrative from, 5 seconds in. It's very interesting.
Well, and I don't know about try to capitalize, but I do think that it's relevant every once in a while for us to talk about Los Angeles and that we work there. Because if really, like, if you were to look at the title of our podcast, you'd think, okay, these are going to be about LA crimes. And it's weird because we can't really talk about LA crimes, hence the vintage stuff that we're doing now. So I can see if we mention that in a way to like tie in our branding, I'll totally own up to that for sure. But I don't know. I mean, I do think celebrity and Hollywood and decadence is synonymous with Los Angeles. I mean, I agree.
I feel bad for you that if you were raised here, you don't understand the magic that this place has. Like, that's on you. Sorry.
Abby says, I'm from Cali and I give you to the capitalized Cali pass. Thank you, Abby. Yes,
thank you, Abby.
For sure.
We can always
California.
Count on Abby.
Lauren says California is a state of mind. Someone else said LA is definitely totally a state of mind. That's Shannon.
Totally.
Totally. Oh yes, thank you. Got it. She put that in all caps too. I mean, we make fun of the Californians. Like, come on. But I like highly educated smarty pantses. That's kind of cute. Thank you. Okay. So here's a short one. The title of it is Too Much Giggling. It's annoying to listen to constant laughs and giggles, especially by Dr. Shiloh. She's annoying. Please be quiet, period.
So can I tell you what I love about this?
Yes, please.
Is like I've been the brunt of so much criticism. Like there's been a lot of Dr. Scott dislike from our lower, like, you know, overall, like our reviews are wonderful and supportive, but they're certainly, I can rub people the wrong way. Welcome to my life. Definitely. Right. That is what I do. I know, what a stretch. So when I saw this one about you, I was like, first of all, that's such bullshit. But I was like, yes, somebody goes after Dr. Shiloh.
Finally. Jason said all these people are on the naughty list. They're all getting coal for Christmas. You know, it is funny because a lot of these will be targeted at you or at me. And I feel like those people are like, how the fuck are these two people friends? Like, there's one, I think it's a 2 or 3 star review, and I can't remember the totality of it, but it's like, I wish this was just Dr. Scott. Like, I wish like Dr. Shiloh wasn't even a part of this show.
So strange.
So it is so strange. I don't get it. We're a pair. We go together.
I know. I have a really dear friend that I reconnected with after, I think, you know, like, was that sort of as Facebook kind of brought people back together from years past. And I reconnected with her just a handful of years ago. And she's such a cool person. And she said, I mean, I like your podcast, but I also like the tone of your conversation with each other so much that I actually use it to go to sleep. And she goes, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's like, it's just, there's a way you talk with each other that's comforting to me. And I thought, oh my God, that's the sweetest thing. That's the best compliment ever. I love that.
Yeah. I like the part about this, again, it's only 2 sentences or 3 sentences, but the please be quiet. I mean, feels very misogynistic to me. I'm like, I feel like I want to be Kamala Harris and be like, I'm speaking. I'm speaking. Shut up.
No, there was, I don't know, you know what? I don't know if you listed it in this one. I don't know if you picked this one out, but I do remember one coming up early on saying that I interrupted you too much. And, you know, that one I actually kind of appreciated. I know that like you were defensive, we got a little defensive on my behalf. Like that we were just in this conversation. But, you know, that is something for our listeners, I do want to say that, like, I'm really, really aware of that as a psychologist, as a marriage and family therapist, that really, you know, the bulk of my training as a clinician at the most base level, especially in the way it's currently done in the modern age, is talking about being aware of your privilege when you walk into a room. And one of the things that, you know, I got very aware of quickly is, especially in school where psychology right now is dominated by women. So you have a majority of women in your classes. And I I am aware that I'm a white guy walking into a situation and I'm loud to begin with. As soon as I feel some comfort, I get kind of loud because I get comfortable. And, on one hand, I could get defensive and say, well, I don't mean to, I just I'm get so excited. But then you realize that just because I have that excitement, I may be taking room away from someone else that doesn't feel the level of ease and comfort and ability to speak. And there are even studies that show how a room full of women can be affected by one man being in the mix, their comfort level in speaking. So I just want to say that I appreciated that review and kind of making me think. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate you taking that in. I think there have been nuggets in some of these that I've sat with, and I think that's after the initial emotional hijacking washes over you, if you can sit with it and say, like, is this the one person that kind of got it and thought about it and decided to write it down? And is this something I need to think about? Why not? Yeah, I'm totally open to that. Yeah. Cool. Right, what's the next one? What else do we got?
Mimosas during pandemic is the in bold. Dr. Shiloh hit a nerve on March 12th's episode when she talked about meeting up with a friend for brunch and mimosas in LA during coronavirus, which is hitting LA hard. She wasted a real-time opportunity to advise people not to congregate with friends and stop the spread. So I'm holding you responsible for your crimes against humanity, Dr. Shiloh. Explain yourself. J'accuse.
You know what I love is that our dear friend of the show, Esther Hilton, brings this one up whenever she can. We must have talked about it at some point on a Get Vocal, because to this day, she'll respond to a story on Instagram and be like, oh, out for mimosas again, Dr. Shiloh. It's really funny. Hey, I get it. This was a very scary time, to be honest. I mean, March 12th-ish. So you think maybe it was a week or two before that I remember exactly what this was. Restaurants were still open, obviously. A friend of mine was going through a divorce in the midst of a pandemic, and we needed some face-to-face time, and we certainly didn't have to go out somewhere. I get that. But it was right at that crest point where you felt like all of this is going to be slipping away soon, everything's going to be shut down. And it was certainly a decision I made. I feel like I made a lot of smart decisions during the pandemic. I also, at some point in October of 2020, could not stand it anymore. And I flew across the country to go take a girls' weekend with a couple friends. And I knew what I was risking, but I also needed that social connection. So I think we all made decisions during this time that we just weighed a lot of different needs depending on health, social wellness, physical wellness. And it's just a really scary, triggering time for folks. So I kind of get it.
I think that there was one dinner that we got together, I think over 2.5 years, or 2 years solid. Dan and I went to an outdoor restaurant in Palm Springs, and then a person's house of 10 people outdoors, where we were all sitting a crazy distance apart. And I've talked about my health. I mean, I'm a total hypochondriac.
You are not. Maybe a little bit.
Kind of a little bit, yeah. But I did not see, even in my heightened state, I did not see those incidences as risk, because we were taking every precaution. If you're taking precaution and you're wearing a mask and you're social distancing, and there's literally wind moving at 20 miles an hour across you in both of those locations. But I think at the time, everybody was scared. So I kind of look at that, you made a decision, an informed decision, and this was a person who was reacting, and we have no idea what they were experiencing either. So I
Sure.
think on a, you know, an objective level, it's probably fear, and I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, for sure. I just want to go back a couple of comments here. Lauren, you said something so lovely. I can't find it, but basically she said, listening to us is like wearing your favorite hoodie. I think that, Lauren, can you put that into an official review on Apple Podcasts? And then Catherine said, as someone who works in the voiceover industry, I can say both of you are very pleasant to listen to.
Oh, thank you.
Very sweet.
Oh my gosh, that's wonderful. And did we know? I didn't even know you were doing voiceovers. That's great.
I didn't know that either. Oh my gosh, Catherine.
Well, now I want to hear your voice.
I was going to say, I'm going to make you talk next time we have our holiday Zoom party. You need to talk more, okay?
Yes.
Let's see if there was anything else. Okay. Let's get through a few more of these, and then maybe we can see if we can get through some of our true crime stuff.
The next one is a doozy, but this one's a very triggering one for me, so I'm gonna like sit here and take it in as you read it.
Okay, you want me to read this honorable mention one, right? There's a couple other 1-star ones that we passed over. They're really quick. Most of them hated the fact that we talked about politics every once in a while. Anyway, okay. So this is actually a 2-star review, which is kind of funny because it's so long and it's so negative that why did they go 2 stars? But here we go. The title is Terrible Insight, in quotes, Predictable Cases, Molasses Delivery. So Scott and I are going to break this up because it is 4 paragraphs. In short, which is hilarious because this is 4 paragraphs.
because it's not short, right?
In short, boring and mind-numbingly condescending. These two very late to the true crime podcast psychologists use their constantly overhyped credentials, followed by 6 exclamation points in parentheses, to act like every other podcaster out there isn't worth your time. I'm sorry, but shows like Murder Squad are infinitely better. We could talk a lot about Murder Squad now. Anyway. Obtaining a PhD in psychology during which you specialized in other matters does not mean you know more about tracking and catching criminals than Paul Holes. Okay, Scott, so I just want to make sure you know, you're no Paul Holes here. Clearly.
I will never have his youthful blonde Adonis looks. I will never.
Okay, deep breaths. Not only are the hosts arrogant, spending way too much time eating, making lots of noise, and drinking wine or whatever. Parentheses here. Oh, and my spouse and I are PhDs in different fields, so we aren't intimidated by the constant references to doctor. Yes, doctor. They covered the same old stories with less insight. You two honestly believed the absurd owl theory in the Peterson case, which was propagated by Peterson's friend, a lawyer, not an owl expert, without bothering to ask one expert how many fatalities are caused by owls after flying inside a house, which is necessary for the damage caused, who then escaped, leaving behind 2 microscopic feathers. You do know that Henry Lee has his own credibility issues, right? For one, he knows nothing about owl attacks, yet you blamed it all on racism because the editor with whom Peterson was conducting an affair edited to make North Carolina people look racist? Not that he wasn't believable. I'm sorry. Okay, that's the end of my paragraph. But did we talk about racism with the staircase? I can't remember.
So
that was so long ago.
Yeah, I was following this one, reading it, and I just it went off the rails so early. For one thing, I'm very clear on how that story evolved, and we speak about this in the episode, that my introduction to the entire crime was an episode of Criminal.
Yeah.
Like a 20-minute blurb where she's talking about the owl theory. And so I came into it knowing only that part and then getting exposed. And did the whole humor and me telling on myself, I mean, it must have just completely gone over her head. Maybe I'm sorry that both of you and your spouse having PhDs weren't able to catch that level of humor that I was, or maybe my delivery was poor.
It's like catching owls.
Yeah.
slipped right by.
I thought that the pin feather thing was really fascinating, but like,
Yeah.
there are other things that are problematic in the Peterson case, but that's not one of them. The whole, that was kind of a joke that you and I had that so I'm not sure why that person really.
I don't know. I still actually entertain the owl theory very much. I don't know. I entertain it. It's a possibility.
Well, yeah, there's other things. The one thing that more so than the owl theory, what I never got with the blow poke is that horrific carnage that you see at the bottom of the staircase. And it's, the few pictures that they did show of the blood splatter was just horrible and terrifying. And, what a terrible death. But no one, unless I'm mistaken, no one ever talked about, if you're using the blow poke as the weapon, what is your range of arm movement with that extended weapon in that small area?
And yeah.
And like, basically what's true. A small hallway, like that to me was infinitely more interesting than the owl theory, because I don't see how they would have done that.
Okay, anyway, there's 2 more paragraphs. Keep going.
Yes.
Keep going.
I am very pleased that you're not lawyers or criminal investigators. I would agree with you there. I'm very pleased that I'm not.
Me too.
And you forgot to mention that Michael Peterson was sleeping with the documentary's editor. Seriously? And folks, that is the least of their issues. They also focus on wealthy white parents when discussing missing children. No concern for others, because only wealthy white parents get media attention. Barth. And that's, clearly that's bullshit, because we have talked about this as problematic over and over and over again. So,
do we, I can't, we don't really do missing persons cases. I'm trying to, again,
this is a triggered response. This is a triggered response.
Yeah.
But, I feel, we are constantly talking about the people that fall between the cracks, and the lack of attention to people of color, women of color, wrongful convictions, the indigenous women disappearing on our northern and our southern borders. So yeah, I don't know what triggered you, but you didn't listen all the way through. You got angry.
Yeah.
Excuse me, and started writing your review.
Okay, so here's the last paragraph. You have heard these cases a million times before on many far better podcasts. They add nothing as they do zero research. Hang on. Gotta make sure I don't fall off my couch here.
Yeah.
Except reading from the latest version of the DSM. No, I'm not kidding. The entire gimmick of this show is that these two are unimpressive psychologists, which means PhDs, not MDs.
Oh,
this is
wow.
This is the second review I have attempted to leave for this podcast, so I stayed subscribed for a longer amount of time to see if they won't scrub it. Sigh, period. Can you scrub reviews?
I don't think you
on
can.
Apple? I've never found out how to. Interesting. Well, look.
maybe this person doesn't have a PhD in pushing the post button, and that's what happened to your first review.
You're getting snarky.
Oops.
I am very proud of the fact that actually our average rating is 4.8 on Apple Podcasts. A 5 is like a red flag. Like, you can't be perfect. So for all of these, plus the 4 that we didn't go through and read, there's been exponentially, such wonderful reviews left behind from people, and it takes
with
a lot
good solid
more
critique too.
Oh, sure.
There's been 3-point or 3-star or 4-star reviews that have made wonderful points that we've really taken to heart. We love critique. Critique is wonderful. Criticism that has a bit of a personal bent, I don't see how I'm going to make much utility out of that.
Yeah. But we all know it takes more effort when you like something to leave a positive review than when you're triggered and you're working off of emotion. So we thank everybody for that. And I think 4.8 is a good place to be. So.
Okay. And another thing, can I go off on a rant? Do we have enough time? We're going to run long today anyway, right?
Run long. That's okay. Yeah.
Look, here's the thing. I want to be very clear about, I know so many people, including myself, that have struggled for years with imposter syndrome. And the majority of people that I know that have imposter syndrome are incredibly accomplished, driven, focused people that unfortunately have a disconnect between what they're able to achieve and what they feel they're able to achieve.
Yeah.
So we could go into a whole, I could speak for hours on that. In fact, that would be, if we could connect that to a crime, I'd love to do a wonderful episode on imposter syndrome, and how it's just rampant in today's world. And I myself have been someone who suffers from that. And let me tell you, working in entertainment and auditioning for 15 years did not help it. Working as a professional dancer and having to weigh my food and weigh in, certainly that didn't help either.
Oh my gosh.
But let me tell you one thing that I'm very clear about, and it took me a while to get here. I didn't have it when I first got out of grad school. I didn't have it when I got licensed, and I didn't have it probably for the first 7 years of my career. But I'm very clear on what I've accomplished. Yeah. I'm very clear on what anybody that manages to get through grad school, write a dissertation, get licensed, and practice anywhere in this country. So that kind of criticism is so hollow. It's just so hollow, and it's so unfounded. And you do you, whoever has those criticisms, because that's not the first time. We've gotten several, not even through Apple reviews, but other things about sort of denigrating all of the work that we put in. Like, if you want to criticize my fashion sense, there's a lot to criticize. Let me tell you. If you want to criticize my interrupting Shiloh in our early episodes, that's completely legit. But this isn't a matter of opinion of whether or not you like vanilla versus strawberry. This is a matter of what I do as a professional, and I'm real clear on what both you and I bring to the plate professionally, and what we do in our work as professionals, and also what we try and do through this podcast. So I don't know how I'm coming across right now. I don't want to come across as snarky or defensive, but it's like, that just doesn't make any sense. And that's when you make a criticism like that on a public forum, I want to encourage you to go and do some self-contemplation about what motivated you to criticize us. Like, you got a PhD as well. Congratulations. I'm really happy for you. I don't know what area it's in. It doesn't matter what it's in. You went to that level, and I respect you for getting to that level. And you really should be offering me at least the level of respect that you offer yourself for these accomplishments.
Well said.
And
well said. And it is, this is not a persona in the sense that this isn't really us. You guys are probably getting more real us than, anyone like in our professional job sees. I am almost embarrassed, but I just cringe a little bit when people insist on calling me doctor in the real world. And in my job, I'm like, Shiloh, like, it's Shiloh, it's fine. So we say doctor and call each other that more here than anywhere. Like, this is not, and it's so hard. You guys know in episodes now, like, I just say Scott. Like, it's so hard to say Dr. Scott to Scott.
Well, it's also a character name.
It is.
It's for us. I mean, aside from what we do, and here I just interrupted you, so I apologize. I apologize for that.
I was wondering. I was mumbling.
That I hate even drawing this parallel, but Dr. Phil is Dr. Phil because he's a media personality, and it's so weird for me to think of us as media personalities or content creators, but we really are. So I am Dr. Scott, but ask anybody who's come to the table at any of the conferences that we've gotten into fantastic discussions with. Also, there are a couple of poor people in London that, like, you could see their eyes go wide, like, oh my God, why did I start talking to this guy? He must be crazy. I gotta get away from him. But the first thing we'll do is like, dude, it's Scott. It's Scott. Just call me Scott. You don't have to call me Dr. Scott.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So our our new nieces, the twins in London. I remember we were at our meetup and I was sitting, forgive me, I can't remember which one it was, and we had just met you guys, right? So it was that night of our meetup, and she goes, "So I have a question for you. What is it like to be celebrities?" And I was like, "Why would you say that?" She's like, "I'm sorry." Like, I just had this weird reaction of like, "What are you even talking about?" and then we got into like a real conversation of just what it's been like to sort of take your profession from a very closed off world to kind of bridging over, to public and content creator. And it was a wonderful conversation, but I was just like, I was repulsed by that term in a sense. And I thought it was just so cute, and she was adorable, and we loved them. So
it's like, we wouldn't even make the D list, but I love that we have, it doesn't feel like an audience. It just feels like we have this big, like, meeting of minds,
And I think it's perfect.
That's what I feel like our show is. It's a meeting of minds.
Yeah. I think it's the perfect size. It makes me not too squeegee about, too many people listening and us being in their ear holes, and just the perfect amount, like reaching people that are awesome. So we were gonna do, as another part of tonight, is kind of a little, not that Scott and I are rapid fire in anything, but we were gonna sort of talk about some true crime events from this last week, and just maybe quickly give you a recap and quickly give you some commentary. We used to do this early on in our live streams, where we would just kind of talk about the true crimes goings-ons of the week. So we're going to start with one near and dear to my heart that had me go, ooh, really? So this was the search warrant that was executed in the Tupac murder case. So Nevada police executed a search warrant on Monday in the investigation of Tupac Shakur, looking for laptops, other electronic devices. You can actually get the whole search warrant, what they were looking for, online. And this was at the home of a gang member who said that he was in the car when Tupac was killed, in the suspect car. So Dwayne Keith Davis, now 60 years old, known as Keefy D, which, if you have followed this case, if you've read the books, if you've listened to the podcast, if you watch the shows, you'll know that name. Lauren, I put an excellent podcast on our Patreon Discord that really got into the weeds on stuff you don't normally hear when these cases are covered, Tupac and Biggie. But you'll know the name Keefy D if you followed this case. So Davis, the warrant said, was affiliated with the Southside Compton Crips street gang, and he's been vocal about his sort of adjacent involvement over the years. Davis was one of 4 people who police say was in the suspect vehicle when Tupac was killed in the drive-by shooting in Vegas. This warrant was executed on his house in Henderson, Nevada, which is basically Las Vegas. And the suspect in the shooting, the leading suspect in the shooting, has always kind of come back to this guy named Orlando Anderson, and he was Davis's nephew. Wow. He later died in a gang-related killing in Los Angeles. So Davis, who was investigated by both Los Angeles and Las Vegas police, initially denied involvement, but later gave police details about the case under a limited non-prosecution agreement. And more recently, he has openly discussed his presence at the scene in interviews and articles and other media. So this has just been cold for 25, not cold, but there's been, task forces that have been re-updated over the years. But essentially 25 years, this has gone unsolved. So, being an LA girl, 90s hip hop fanatic, this is kind of interesting. We'll see where it goes.
It just feels so weird that it's been a quarter of a century, to use that term, right?
Right.
Like it feels like
old.
It could have been just yesterday, because it has he's so much still part of the vernacular and part of the music world and LA vernacular. So just like that, I think that Scott, actually kind of.
Can you stop with the LA references? Can you just stop right now? I mean,
could you not interrupt me?
I'm just gonna hug my
Yay!
vibrating pillow.
As long as we can keep our eyes on it, okay? So
Oh my
here's the other
God.
one. Here's the other one that's
Whew.
big in the news, and this is huge for the
Obviously.
entire true crime community, and especially, not especially for us, but also for us because of our wonderful friend that wrote Lost Girls, which is an incredible, incredible book. I'm sure everyone who's listening to this podcast or this view, whenever you're listening to it, you've probably read Kolker's book. If you haven't, please, please, please read it, because it's just,
so good.
You know, the
Beautiful.
story of these poor women that, you know, to get a background on these lives, so invaluable. And so for those of us that, you know, were really into that aspect of the human aspect of these women who fell into a very dangerous area of sex work. Not all sex work is dangerous, but this is certainly one, and it cost them their lives. But last Friday, Suffolk County authorities announced that they had arrested a man they believed had killed at least 4 of the women. His name is Rex Heuermann. He's a 59-year-old architect who had an office near Penn Station and lived on a quiet street in Long Island. That's a big deal. The big deal about that is that in the New York Times article that just came out, which is also fantastic, and we'll link that in our show notes.
Yeah.
Is that the ability to triangulate on cell phone data had shrunk the area of possibility of killers to an area that was about, I think they said 100 houses. That's a big deal.
Gosh, that is a big deal.
From where they started, they shrunk it down.
So basically, like using the last known calls that these women had made to what they found out were like these disposable phones was in this triangulated area, right?
Right. And then, but that's also really important what you just said, Dr. Shiloh, is that what they did was they made the connection that it wasn't just these missing women's phones. It was, there's another common factor. It's the number of burner phones that are getting pinged. So somebody was smart enough to go, not just to look for repeats in known numbers, but repeats in disposable numbers. That's a very big deal.
Yes.
So they triangulated on these phones. The last to disappear was named Amber Costello, and she was 27 years old. She had listed her business, her work as a sex worker on both Backpage and in Craigslist, which most people know those ads on Craigslist have been taken down in the last decade because of the number of associated crimes. She was, before she was last seen in September 2010, 13 years ago, a would-be client contacted her through a burner phone, set up a meeting to contact her at her home. So he's in the parking lot. She tells him to come in. They were able to identify that it was a very distinctive car. This is very important because it's a very, very distinctive car. SUV in the front, pickup in the back, what was then called a Chevy Avalanche. I don't even think they make them anymore.
Yeah, my father-in-law has one.
Really? Okay.
It's the mullet of cars. SUV in the front, pickup in the back.
Right. So one of the things that was notable about this assailant, or this person of interest at that time, was that he was described as hulking. He's a really large guy, built big. They don't really say whether he's muscular but he was like a big guy with bushy hair, glasses, and might have been trying to sort of disguise himself to a bit, versus what later we found out that he was in a very well-known, well-respected type of job. But the incident here gets really complex because when the assailant goes into her apartment, she was involving a friend of hers in a known scam, which the known scam is that there's an exchange of money, and then the supposed boyfriend of the sex worker runs in an enraged state, scares the person off. So basically she doesn't have to perform, but they both split the money that they scared the potential John out of. So interestingly enough, after that wild incident, he calls her again the next night to set up another time. So he was really focused on connecting with her.
So do we think he was like, he didn't know it was a scam and he was just really focused on her, like you said? Or do you think he knew it was and he was fucking pissed and he's like, I'm gonna get this one?
I had not even considered that. I don't know. What do you guys think in the chat?
Yeah, I just know my husband's like gross after I mentioned my father-in-law was not drunk. Sorry. And like, you can't disguise the size that Human is. Like, he's Human, like his name's a little odd. He is a big guy, like towered over those cops. It's funny that Shannon said his arrest cracked me up though. New Yorkers just be like walking by, nothing to see here, I got to get to hot yoga, can you guys get off the sidewalk please?
And I also love Abby Blackbird's, like Abby, God love Abby, find the one that's hilarious. He was described as looking like Peter Griffin, like a real life Peter Griffin.
Oh my God. Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, I mean, really, it's like this lead about the truck had been in the records for a very long time, and we're talking.
Did it get buried or lost?
I think lost. I think it was buried there. I did see in that New York Times article that the previous head investigator said nothing was ever brought to my attention about a vehicle, or we would have followed up on it, which I kind of course, would expect him to say that. But like, basically this new task force, it took 6 weeks for them to work with the phone records, then go into the database, look for this vehicle, and triangulate a guy that had that vehicle lives right within these 100 houses. Right. And then it was on from there, right? Like the other circumstantial evidence, his Tinder account, several email addresses, all fictitious names, by the way, led to other disposable phones that he was using to contact massage parlors, sex workers, and
then there was the timing of several murders coinciding when it was known that his wife and children were out of town. So let me make sure that we put a pin in what I'm about to say. Is that the sheriff got in a lot of trouble. There was like there was a crooked cop. So can everyone acknowledge that we're talking that there are some bad police out there?
Propaganda. Yes. Oh, it was a hot mess. I mean, Suffolk County Sheriff's Department. Yeah, there's lots of shows that have done some good work on covering that shit show. But yeah, I mean, after he was on their radar, this basically came down to like a Golden State Killer issue of trying to link the DNA, because there were hairs found in the duct tape on some of these women. And then they just waited for him to toss out a box of pizza. Pizza will catch you every time, right? Pizza's the new way to link people to crimes. So it looks like one of them, it looks like some of the hairs may have actually belonged to his wife, but one was a potential match for Kierman himself.
So look, he got away with this for over a decade because of poor police work and, criminals. There was also, I think, the DA from that original, the DA's in prison, the sheriff is in prison. So there was a lot going on there.
Sheriff's attorney is in prison. Yeah.
Do we think that he continued? Continued? Because it seems like you don't just stop that. And there's also, as they got a hold of his electronics, they found, surprise, illegal child sex images on it as well.
Oh, shocking.
What a shock.
So I was talking about this with the management analyst that works with me. She's like our front office staff. She had just listened to our episode. She's been binging our episodes. And then she texted me the day this arrest happened and was like, what the fuck? I just listened to your episode on this. But, the fact that he was still continuing to at least talk to women and be in contact with them. I wonder how much that was like sort of a replacement for the behavior. You know, at least if he was not killing, if he stopped the behavior, but kind of knew that he always could if he wanted to, sort of thing. Like, let me keep engaging in these meetups or in talking to them to sort of satiate my need to have some sort of power and dominance. I think it could have kept him at bay for a little bit. I don't know. I just don't know.
So there's interesting, because Shannon brought something up I think that's fascinating. Shannon had said, Dr. Catherine Ramsland said they do stop, which is a very good point. My understanding, though, is that generally, doesn't the stopping happen because they age out? There are other factors involved?
Yes. Well, I mean, we can say that about any crime, right? So it's kind of extrapolated to violence and serial killing for sure. And obviously Dr. Ramsland has done most in-depth work and conversations with BTK, who did stop. But you just wonder, like, they have to be meeting that need in some way. I mean, it could be to a lesser degree, and lots
Right.
of deviant sexual behaviors and violent behaviors. We know there's other ways in which they can do that. Like we've talked about, instead of killing someone and having sex with a corpse, they could ask their partner to role play. Yeah. There's other different ways that those needs can be met. I think it is a little bit of a trope of like, they are unstoppable and they cannot stop that after they start. And still, like, we are talking about such a small percentage of criminal offenders, even though we have a great deal of information. There's a lot that we don't know, and they're so individualized. Right. I mean, I think it's just hard to make generalizations as much as we want to. And, we want profiling to kind of be this magic thing. And we have sort of a rubric and a matrix. They're so
and
incredibly rare.
Predictive. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, what's interesting is that, now I have to backtrack a little bit and just say, these are all alleged. Yes, there are things connecting him, but until he goes through the process of adjudication, we're not going to really know for certain. But again, this is like the Toronto van incident with a self-professed incel, because that individual was taken alive by some really great police work. Yeah. We now have a lot of data on what's going on in that particular person's mind, who is not representative of all incels. So that kind of reflects on what you're saying too, is that if this individual, if Mr. Heuermann is actually guilty of these crimes and he's caught, much like the BTK, in ongoing interviews is going to actually uncover a wealth of information that can add to our body of knowledge.
Sure. Yeah. Interesting. Let's cover one last one and we'll wrap it up here, because this I just found today. And it actually goes back to one of the reviews, interestingly, in talking about the owl theory and the Peterson case and all of that. So I think we might have a true fall from grace here from one of a leading, forensic scientist in our community. So a federal judge ruled yesterday that famed forensic scientist Henry Lee was found liable for fabricating evidence in a murder case.
Why?
This murder case sent 2 Connecticut men to prison for decades for crimes that they did not commit. So this very quickly here, we're talking about Ralph Birch and Sean Henning, who were convicted in the December 1st, 1985 slaying of Everett Carr, based in part on testimony about what Lee said were bloodstains on a towel found in the 65-year-old's home. A judge vacated the felony murder convictions 3 years ago in 2020, and then the men filed a wrongful conviction lawsuit naming Lee and 8 police investigators and the town of New Milford So when Birch and Henning were put on trial in 1989, jurors heard about an extremely bloody crime scene, not unlike the staircase, or O.J. Simpson for that matter, which, Henry Lee, was certainly involved in. And the victim, Mr. Carr, had been stabbed 27 times, had his throat cut, and suffered several blows to the head. No forensic evidence in that linked Birch and Henning to the crime. No blood was found on their clothes or in the car. The crime scene included hairs and more than 40 fingerprints, but none matched the two men. So prosecutors presented testimony and evidence from Lee, who wasn't as famous, obviously, as he is now back in 1989, that it was possible for assailants to avoid getting blood, DNA evidence on them in a crime scene like this. So I don't know the ins and outs of this case. I don't think anyone probably really does. I'm sure everyone will be digging into it now. But this could be really, really problematic.
Oof. It could
think
be
about
really,
all the
really
cases.
Huge.
This is the one. I'm so sorry. Go ahead. You go for it.
No, I was just going to say that I do think that there's some value in this. I'm glad that this is being exposed in the same way that anytime research is falsified, and research is different because, it's not completely, it's not like in Lee's case that these was falsifying evidence, but it's in the same paradigm. And I just think we need to call this shit out more often in every discipline and domain.
Yeah, no, for sure. And there's so much, we've come so far. And just as we're catching, old man killers that didn't think anyone would come knocking on their doorstep due to technology, there's so much that we convicted people on back in the day that doesn't hold up anymore. And it's disappointing, I guess. Henry Lee's one of those that I'm like, okay, what he says goes. I remember one of his books that I have, he covered the John Benet Ramsey case. This was way, way, way before they did that special where they brought in all the experts. But he was like, this case will never be solved. The way the evidence is and the way the evidence was regarded and disregarded, this case will never be solved. And that kind of gave me a little bit of like, okay, if Henry Lee says it, then Henry Lee says it. So be it.
when our idols fall, that's that's a big deal.
Yeah, it is. So do you like my little body jewelry?
I love that.
Took my daughter and her bestie to Universal Studios yesterday, and we spent the night at the hotel out there and hung out by the pool and stuff last night. So that's right.
Awesome.
It's not a hand tattoo, guys. No hands, no neck. Those are my rules.
Let me mention, we got two more quickly to mention as we wrap up. This was also a big week for a colleague of ours regarding Alyssa Turney's disappearance. Michael Turney, her father, was finally, after years and years and years, was taken to trial. And unfortunately, in that procedure, on the 6th day of the trial, the judge acquitted him, agreeing with the defense that there was just not any evidence to prove even that Alyssa is dead, and that he was responsible for it. And this is incredibly, incredibly disappointing to many people, including our colleague, our peer, her sister, who has been spearheading this for years, with great support. And I think it goes without saying, even if you're not a psychologist or a profiler, that there's something wrong with Michael Turney. There's something very, very wrong with that individual. And we want to offer her our support, and we really do hope that that people reach out appropriately and offer their support to her, because this has got to be a very tough time. Definitely no body homicide cases are so difficult, and Phoenix PD felt that they could move forward with it, and I think that brought a lot of
hope for Sarah and for the rest of her family and her brothers. And, this is an incredibly rare type of ruling where they had the full trial and all the testimony, and the judge before. So the Michael Turney's attorneys, that sounded weird in my head as I was about to say it, made a motion to the court to just dismiss it before it even went to the jury. And the judge granted that. So the judge has that power, which has got to be, I can't imagine how frustrating that is for Sarah and her family to not even let it go to a jury the way that we think our criminal justice system should. But yeah, this is pretty rare for this sort of thing to happen. So
yeah.
I reached out to Sarah on behalf of both of us, just sent her a text the day that I heard, offering her our support. And she replied, thank you, a couple of days later. But you guys, she and her brother made a statement on the Voices for Justice podcast. So they decided to put it out there where they could control it a little bit more. So go listen to what they had to say. Yeah. Short and sweet and thoughtful, and everything it needs to be. And we'll see how we can support her next after this. So yeah. Really tough stuff. Why don't we end on that note?
Yes.
This has been so fun. Look at just you and I, and we went an hour and a half. Oh my gosh.
Oh, please. Like guys. Between the two of us, we could go for hours, but yeah.
I know. You guys would be shocked to know that Scott has still not invited me over for a housewarming. I know he's trying to get it perfect before we come over. You've done so much work. I'm so proud of you. You've been keeping me up to date of what you've been doing. Please don't hurt yourself, like falling off a roof or something.
Oh my gosh.
In your new place.
I was telling them I was determined to tie the bougainvillea up on the roof of the garage. And as I was climbing up the ladder, I thought, what am I doing? I am not the age to be able to do this anymore, but I'm okay. And I won't do it.
You're good. All right. Sounds good. Thank you, all of you in the chat. We appreciate you so much. Thanks for sticking around for a little bit longer than usual. We love you guys. We sincerely thank every one of you, our Patreon members, on down to the person who maybe just pops in every once in a while. So thanks for being here, giving us your time. And let's see, next month, we are still trying to get our friend who does threat assessments, risk assessment evaluations. I also connected with a homicide detective today that I used to work with, who has offered to come on. So he's had some wild and crazy cases. So maybe that, but let us know who you want to hear from, and we'll start lining up some more good guests for you guys. Maybe to another 3 years of live streams.
So I just wanted, but also in closing, wanted to say thank you to our Patreon members that have been hanging out with me on Discord. Yes. It is such a blast. And I have had so much going on in the last few months. I really have not even had the opportunity to do it, but man, there are some great conversations that we have on Discord. So thank you all for making that so refreshing and giving us such support and such great ideas for episodes that we clearly don't do enough research for.
Well, there's not going to be any more because I can't fit anything else in. All right. Good to see you, Scott.
Good to see you.
And thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Have a great night.
We sincerely thank you for spending some time with us today. LA Not So Confidential is part of the Crawlspace Media Network in partnership with Glassbox Media. Each episode is hosted, produced, and written by Dr. Scott and Dr. Shiloh. Our post-production editing and sweetening magic is handled by the multi-talented Jason Usry of Ear Cult Productions.
The LA Not So Confidential theme, entitled Cool Vibes Film Noir, is composed and performed by the talented Kevin MacLeod. He graciously allows us to use his music via a Creative Commons Attribution license, and you can check out all of Kevin's amazing work on YouTube.
All of the resources for each episode can be found on our website at la-not-so-confidential.com. You can find us on Instagram at LA Not So Podcast, on Twitter at LA Not So Pod, and on Facebook at LA Not So Confidential. Media inquiries and bookings are scheduled at alienistentertainment@gmail.com.
Please join us each month on Saturdays at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for a live streaming and very interactive broadcast on YouTube entitled Behind the Couch. Stay tuned to all of our social media for our live streaming scheduling announcements.
Subscribe to LA Not So Confidential so you never miss a new episode. And lastly, we'd be honored if you joined our Patreon at patreon.com/LA Not So Podcast. With a subscription, you get an ad-free listening experience, and you'll be the first notified about upcoming live events, social gatherings, and super cool swag coming your way.
Thanks for listening, and join in with us next time on LA
Not So
Confidential. Bye, folks.